Yo, Eric Dubois with EDP-Beats.com, and thank you for all the great reaction that I've got from the first episode of this series, What's in Stock. Super stoked about it. This was just something that I wanted to do for myself, to kind of go through all the plugins. Got a lot of good feedback and a lot of good suggestions to better the videos, so we're gonna try to evolve with what everyone thinks is best and how everyone thinks is gonna be good. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna be doing is we're gonna go actually through the list of plugins and stock plugins that are in Ableton, and we're just gonna go it alphabetically and just go through it. See how this works and see how these plugins work live with you guys, and we're gonna try to keep the video as short as we can. So, first off, today we're gonna talk about Amp. The Amp plugin in Ableton. I've used it before only on guitars, because that's pretty much what the Amp plugin for me was all about, was just guitars and just getting a good sound with a plugged in guitar straight into the sound card. But today we're going to try it out on 3 different things. So I have 3 tracks set up right here in Ableton. I have a drum loop, I have a synth, basically an instrument, so it's just kind of like a flute, and then I have a vocal chop. All of these are from my sound packs, besides the vocal chop that I got it from Splice. And we're just gonna use the amp on all of these, no other effects, just what comes with the loop, and see what this amp can do. So here we go. What's in stock, episode 2, Amp. This is how the Amp plugin looks like in Ableton, and this is the default setting that you will get straight from the get-go. I've learned everything here on YouTube, so all my production skills for the past 10 years, I've learned everything on YouTube and my own practice. So to help me out with the technical terms, because also one thing, I'm from France, so my English is not perfect, but I'm gonna use this little info tab here in Ableton to help me with the technical terms for everything that's going on in the plugin, right? So first off, let's describe a little bit the plugin and what we have here. So what does Ableton have to say for all of these switches? So as we can see here, the main thing, we're gonna go from top to bottom, the main thing is the output. So as a regular amp, usually it goes out in mono, but you can choose to have it out in stereo. Now what does it say here? In the info tab, it's written super small. The output switch toggles between mono and stereo, dual processing. Note that in dual mode, amp uses twice as much CPU. So that's super good to know, actually. So we're gonna keep it in mono for this. Then right down here, we have the different amp types. So we have a clean, boost, blues, rock, lead, heavy, and bass. The clean, a 60s classic amp. Boost is a 60s tremolo channel. Blues is a bright 70s amp. Rock, a classic 45 watt amp. If you're not a guitarist, the 45 watt amp is pretty small, so you'll have that kind of crunchy sound, I suppose. We're gonna check that. Lead is great for metal, apparently. Heavy is thick and heavy, okay. And bass is strong, low end, and a fuzz. Each of every one of these cabinets, you can choose pretty much the gain, the bass, the middle, the treble. So this is your mini kind of EQ right here. And the presence. What is the presence? Presence is an additional tone control for mid-high frequencies in the power amp stage. Its influence on the sound varies considerably depending on the amp model used, but can add or subtract edge or crispiness. Ooh. So yeah, I remember when I used to play guitar in a punk rock band, the presence was something that I would kind of play around with. Then we have the volume output knob, and then a nice dry wet knob, which I love plugins that have a dry wet knob. Go crazy on it with the settings, exaggerate it a lot, and then I can just drop down the dry wet to just have that wet crazy signal a little bit in the background, which is pretty cool. So we're gonna leave it at 100%. I'm gonna turn off the amp right now, and I'm gonna play you the drums solo. So this is the drum loop that I have from my sample pack. So it's just a basic drum loop, a kick, some claps, and a snare. So there's no processing on it, no compressor, no nothing. This is just the loop how it is. And we're gonna slap on the amp at the default settings and see what happens. So. Alright, so the blues, we're already hearing that it gets really crushed and really saturated, so we're going to try to just play around with the settings here, just try to see what kind of sound we can get. So I'm going to try to switch it to dual for the drums to see how it goes. Still pretty highly compressed, but we're gonna play around with it. We're gonna see what we can find cool. I'm gonna go through all of these settings here and see if there's any kind of difference or any kind of sound and what I could use it for on the drums. Okay, so this plugin is not crazy on an entire drum loop. It would probably be cool on just a snare or some hats to give it a little bit of texture to it, because it does distort it quite a lot and kind of ruins a little bit the quality. Even if we are in dual mode, it doesn't sound good to me. So to it, no matter what I can do, and I can't really see the when I might use it, but I might use it on a snare to just give it a little bit more crunch, and playing around with the treble and the dry wet knob just to get that in the back, right? So yeah, let's see how it goes on a synth. Okay, so it's just a flute sound. There's some reverb, there's some echo already in the loop, but we're gonna see what this amp does now that we checked it out on the drums. Might add a little bit of crunch to those flutes and add that a little bit in the background and see how that goes. So let's turn it on and see what's up. Straight default plugin on. Let's hear. All right, so it definitely needs to lower the treble a bit. So that's pretty cool. So just the default setting, I lowered the treble a little bit because it was getting a little bit too crazy over in the highs. Lowered the presence as well because it added a little more highs that I didn't really like. But it did add a nice little crunch and a nice little touch. It was cool in mono. It's cool also in duo, but I don't know how much CPU that thing uses. Alright, so let's hear it off, let's hear it on. So it did add a little bit of that airiness of the flute, that kind of breath, you know, same as the singer has sometimes, just kind of like that high-end tone, which was pretty cool. I'm gonna try different amp settings, and we're gonna see what we can get there. Yeah, so that's way too much distortion. Same, not crazy. So especially since this flute has some reverb already on it, we're affecting the reverb also, which is why we're getting so much of that so much of that kind of noise in the background, especially that these amps are distorting the shit out of everything. So yeah, it doesn't sound great, but if we use it subtly, it does make it sound a bit thicker in my opinion, and there is possibilities to use this on some synths. Let's try it out on the voice. Same thing, default setting. So here's how the loop sounds alone. So let's type on the amp. So again, the voice, you can hear there is some reverb on it, so we might get some weirdness going on. But if we play with the treble, which are the high frequencies, and the presence and the gain, we could be able to get something cool. So this is the default setting on a vocal. Oh yeah, super high. Dual. So it does add a crunch, kind of like a saturator or an overdrive we might use. So actually it could be really cool for just a background vocal if you want to kind of have like that telephone line effect, if you just want it like in the back, just a little bit of crunch to it, which is really nice. So instead of going straight for the saturator in my next tracks, I might just go for the amps and see if it sounds better and see if it sounds cool, especially on vocals at the beginning, since vocals are usually in mono, same as a guitar signal. It could be a good alternative to have like a different sound than the saturator. Let's go through everything and just see if we can find something else that's pretty cool. Crazy. So that, using just the clean amp, if you can hear the difference, let's put it before. You can hear it adds a lot of breath and a lot of high end to the vocal. But yeah, so that's all of the different kinds of cool things that you could do with the amp that I would do with the amp. What I've used it before also is for a bass. So whenever I'm recording a bass directly through here, I even add it on an 808 bass, just the bass roundup plugin that gives it a really cool sound and a really smooth texture to the bass. It just kind of gets everything nice and flat. I like it a lot on bass, this bass roundup preset from the amp plugin. So yeah, I hope you guys learned something. I know I did. It's a little extreme, but again, it's made for guitars. It's an amplifier, right? So it's made for guitars and bass and stuff like that. So of course on different types of instruments, it's not going to work that well, but I might do it on just some singular sounds and just some ear candy on some stuff. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Hit a like, hit a comment, all that kind of stuff that I need to say. And I'll see you guys next week for another episode of What's in Stock. So leave in the comments below any suggestions as you have on the video, if you want me to use different loops, if you don't really care, if well, anything like that. So peace, much love, and have a good day. Peace.